Let's update the QB rankings for Dynasty next on Fantasy Football Today in 5. Welcome to FFT in 5. I'm Chris Towers. I'm here with Heath Cummings, and we're talking about the QB rankings for Dynasty. You can head to cbssports.com. Check out the Dynasty Fantasy Football, what do we call it? Dynasty Fantasy Football Central, I think is what we call it. It's there on the homepage.
Yeah, the landing page.
Yeah, the landing page, whatever you want to call it. We got all of Heath's off-season Dynasty update stuff there. We've been doing it for the last couple of weeks on FFT and 5 as well. And Heath, were there any big movers in your latest QB Dynasty rankings updates?
Well, there was one guy who rose 3 spots, but it was from 7 to 4. So that seems like kind of a big move. It's Lamar Jackson. The main concern I had about Lamar Jackson was the fact that he had the injury concerns the last 2 years. He did not have the long-term contract. I was worried that he might not play at the beginning of this year. Now all those concerns are gone. And you get the added bonus, the added Zay Flowers. And I'm starting to get more excited about what Todd Monken's going to do with this offense. You know, if you look at his history as an offensive play caller in a variety of different ways, he has almost always produced very good offensive production. So I do think that things are looking better for Lamar Jackson. It's really tough once you get past Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Jalen Hurts to say who should be number 4. I think Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, Joe Burrow all have a claim to that, but I'll go with Lamar.
Yeah, I think, especially when you're talking about 2023 and redraft value, like Joe Burrow is probably the high floor option. He's probably the best bet to get you 25 points per game, which is really good. But, when we're looking for difference makers, we're looking for, that 28 point per game range that Mahomes, Allen, and Hurts have all been in. And, Burrow, it's not impossible that he could get there, but you probably need like a 4,800 yards, 45 touchdown kind of season from him. Lamar Jackson, his 2018 season was arguably the best we've ever seen from a quarterback in fantasy. He averaged over 30 points per game. So I think it makes sense to move him up. And, between hopefully a healthy Rashad Bateman, whatever they get out of Odell Beckham, and then the addition of Zay Flowers, I do think this is probably the best wide receiver group he's ever had.
Unless Zay Flowers is a complete bust, it is absolutely the best receiver group he's ever had.
Let's talk about some other movers. Trevor Lawrence is someone who, if you look at it from a year ago, he's moved up quite a bit. How are you feeling about him?
I just wrote about him actually from a 2023 perspective. And I think like right now, I would view his ceiling similarly to what I would Joe Burrow's, but he has not shown that floor at all. He does not, I know he got Calvin Ridley, but it's Calvin Ridley 2 years removed from playing football. It's not the same thing as Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, both entering their prime.
And from a dynasty perspective, Calvin Ridley is already 29.
Right.
So, how many elite years does he have left? Potentially. I mean, 29 is right around when most wide receivers start to fall off.
Yeah, I think Lawrence is definitely QB7 for me, just ahead of Justin Herbert. He's 2 years younger, but it's 2 distinct tiers before him. Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, then Jackson, Fields, Burrow, then Lawrence part of a tier with Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray, and oddly enough, Anthony Richardson. He doesn't really fit with that group in terms of an archetype, but he certainly fits in terms of value for me.
Yeah, I think Justin Herbert from a 2023 perspective is really interesting because we overrated him heading into 2022. If you look back at NFC ADP, which I was doing the other day, he was actually going a couple of spots ahead of Patrick Mahomes, which that was a mistake. But the way I look at Justin Herbert right now is like, you can take Joe Burrow with like the 55th pick, which is around where he's gone in a lot of our drafts, or you could probably wait 2 rounds and just take Justin Herbert. And I'm not sure there's going to be that big of a difference between them. So that's the way I'm looking at it. Who's someone who's fallen in your most recent updates?
It's interesting because everybody falls a little bit, and I try to ignore the guys who mostly fell because rookies went in front of them. But I think it's a decent point with Daniel Jones. He was QB 12 2 months ago. He is currently QB 16. 3 of the guys who are ahead of him are Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, and CJ Stroud. Also, Deshaun Watson growing more comfortable with the idea that Cleveland's going to throw the ball a league average amount of time. I've got Watson now ahead of Daniel Jones as well. Definitely think he has more upside. And I think it's interesting just from thinking of the thought of 4 months ago, and some people still do, Jones was being viewed as a rising dynasty asset. He just had his best season as a fantasy starter. He got the new contract, so he's got some security. but he's still just a guy. It's still when he does things really well, he runs for 700 yards and turns in 20 fantasy points per game. But that's not actually that exciting.
Yeah, and it's a situation where I think at the beginning of the offseason, we probably expected the Giants to really revamp their receiving group and take a big step forward. And they added Darren Waller and Jalen Hyatt in the third round, and that's it so far. And you look at it and it's like, well, Darren Waller's got an opportunity to be pretty good, but he's 30, 31, something like that. So, like, how much better is this receiving group going to be, especially when you're talking about 2024, 2025 for Daniel Jones, when there are some questions about how invested the Giants have to be in him beyond this year,
Yeah, 100%. I think that their improvements to the receiving core were a major disappointment for me this offseason, because from a dynasty perspective, Waller, he doesn't even help that much. He's probably a 1 or 2 year boost. And almost every player they've surrounded him with. I mean, you've got Wan'Dale Robinson coming off the ACL. You got Sterling Shepard coming off multiple major lower leg injuries. Darren Waller at 31 hasn't played a full season in 3 years. So there's question mark. It's not just that we don't know for sure who the 3 best receivers are. There's question marks about all of them.
All right, that's going to do it for FFT and 5. We'll be back tomorrow. Make sure you subscribe and like wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you next time.